Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Why, yes it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome into it. It is your pre-Friday celebration, the greatest day of the entire week. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're ready to rock and roll and carpe diem all over this place, baby. It's what we're all about. So great to have you as usual. We are broadcasting right here in the heart of the nation at our flagship radio station in Wichita, Kansas. But we are all over the country. So many great radio affiliates and more. We have a big show lined up for you today. Kurt Couchman, the Senior Fellow of Fiscal Policy with Americans for Prosperity, our great partners. They'll be joining us at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk reconciliation bill. The one big, beautiful bill, where's it at in the Senate? I believe they're doing some floor debates on it starting next week, I believe. So we'll get to that and what that looks like. What could they be changing? Also the rescission bill, different cuts in the federal budget, and so much more. So get ready for that one. First and foremost today, and I really wish, honestly, the conservatives would talk more about this and that we should really take hold. We should do a major marketing scheme and actually take hold and run with this. But today is Juneteenth, and Republicans and conservatives, we should be focusing more on Juneteenth than what we do. A lot of people say, oh, it's another identity politics thing. We just came out of, we're in Pride Month right now. We're just had Black History Month a few months ago. Can we stop the identity politics? And I get that. At the same time, we have to remember what Juneteenth is. It's not the celebration of the ending of slavery, which is the generalized theme of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the reminder that there were still Democrat plantations in Texas 2 years after the slaves were freed during the Civil War in 1865, when Union soldiers came out and said, hey, don't know if you got the memo, but you don't need to be here anymore. And the Democrat plantation owners were like, yeah, totally forgot to tell you about that little minor detail. You really haven't needed to be working for me the past 2 years, and was the official ending of slavery by reminding that we are no longer in servitude to work for somebody else and to be a slave towards somebody else. And ironically, in today's times, if you want to relate it to, we still have that mentality of Democrat progressives, even though they try to say the political parties have flipped over the years, that we still have the Democrats that overall believe that you are a piece of property, we're going to tax you. You don't have privacy rights and private property rights, that we're going to tell you exactly how to vote. We're going to put you on social programs and put a glass ceiling on you to where you can never be successful whatsoever. And we're going to dehumanize you like we have done to Donald Trump, that you're no longer a human being, but you're just an entity that we can demonize and hate if we choose to do so. The ideology has not changed whatsoever. And we have to remind that and relate it to what's happening today. So happy Juneteenth, and the fact that after 2 years of slavery being abolished, that the last slaves were finally emancipated and freed because they realized that, oh yeah, we can actually leave and go and live our American dream and live our life. So that being said, happy Juneteenth to you. All right.
What's trending today?
There's plenty to talk about. Obviously, the big story that's been going on lately has been the ongoing Israel and Iranian conflict, as Caroline Leavitt making a statement earlier today that Donald Trump considering what to do next. Now, Israel has requested us to use a bomb of ours, the Moab bomb, I believe, the missile that goes underground a few hundred feet to go after some of those cells in Iran. I don't know if that will be granted. At the same time, the Iranian leaders, after having their butts whooped lately, have now requested to even come to the White House to meet Donald Trump for negotiations. This was Caroline Leavitt earlier today.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So we will see what President Trump does moving forward, but they are asking for renegotiations again. Donald Trump said, where have you been this whole time? We've been trying to negotiate with you on an Iranian trade deal or with the nuclear deal, and you have not done so. And now you've had your wake-up call. Talking about some of this and more, happy to have back on the program, but a while. She is the president of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem and the director as well, the American Christian Leaders for Israel as well, Dr. Susan Michael. Susan, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Andy, great to be with you today.
Yeah, it is great to have you on. What is the latest that you've heard? I know that we saw, what was it, last night, this morning, the bombing or the missiles that went into a hospital in a very heavily populated civilian zone in Israel. What's the situation with all this right now? What's going on?
Well, first of all, what a miracle that was, because
Yeah.
one of the medical directors there had felt the night before to evacuate the surgical center, and that's exactly the part that was hit. So he saved dozens of lives by moving them into other parts of the hospital. So, for the Israeli people, they're exhausted because they've now gone on, 6 nights of no sleep, because they get 1 hour, maybe 2, and then here goes the alerts, and they have to move to the bomb shelter again. And so they're exhausted, but I have to say they are resolute, they are united, they know that this is a necessary war that they just have to endure and go through, because it's about their future existence. It's about the existence of a state for their children and their grandchildren. So they're completely united that this was absolutely necessary. And if you want to question whether it was or not, just think about all those missiles coming into Israel. What if they had nuclear warheads? So that's what the Israelis are thinking. Thank God they don't have nuclear warheads, because we acted before they could do that.
Yeah. It's a really great point. Let's talk about here on the home front for just a moment in our response. Obviously, Israel is a great ally to the United States. Donald Trump has said that repeatedly. That's why we had the Abraham Accords, the last administration, why we put our embassy in Jerusalem to say that is going to be the capital, and that's where we're going to reign from. Where do we stand right now? Because this is a major divide among Republicans and even just Americans in general right now. Non-interventionist, we don't want to get involved in another conflict, to we need to support Israel and give them whatever they need. Where do we stand right now, do you think?
Well, I loved what President Trump said. He said that, America first includes a non-nuclear Iran. So, in other words, he's not going against the core of his MAGA doctrine or America First doctrine. He just knows this is a danger to the world. It's not just a danger to Israel, it's a danger to the United States. And we have to insist that they are not nuclear, because they've made it very clear what their intention is. So yes, there's a lot of division over it, but Israel's never asked us for troops on the ground, for help like that, but they do get weapons from us. They buy weapons from us. We've been a great partnership, but they do not have this big bomb that is required to go 250 feet underground to bomb the key site, the Fador site there in Iran. Yeah. Only the United States can bomb it. And that's what Trump is referring to. We've got Israel's back. We've provided support. We've done some air support. But the big question is about bombing that site. That will completely destroy the nuclear program. And Israel does not have the capability of doing that.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems like right now the whole argument of either we need to have boots on the ground, which I think if this would have happened 20 years ago, we've said this before, if it was still the Bush administration, for example, we would have boots on the ground already, as in like the day after these attacks would have happened, we would have been part of that operation. Now we're handling it, I think, perfectly. We don't want boots on the ground. We don't want to get militarily involved with Iran, but Israel obviously has the right to do what they need to do to protect themselves as a nation, and we support that. So let's be the cheerleader. Let's help them with the Iron Dome and stop some of the missiles coming over to their area. Outside of that, do your thing, man. We don't need to be much actively part of this on the offense. That's kind of a good stance for Trump right now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's basically what he's done, and it's a good place to be, and that's all Israel wants, really. The whole issue is over this one site. But, there's other ways that they can bring down the nuclear program in Iran, and that would be if the people rise up and they insist on regime change and the regime
Do you think they would?
falls. It's possible they did under the Obama administration, but they got no support from the Obama administration or the Western world, and it kind of died out. Now I think that if they rose up, they would find support from the United States and Western allies, and maybe they could do it. Maybe lightning will strike or whatever, but there's other ways that this regime could fall, and then the Western world would have access to the Flador site. They'd be able to go in and physically just dismantle it and carry out those things that shouldn't be inside the country. That would be a far better solution. And I think Trump knows that, and he's threatening Iran to see if the Ayatollah will just unconditionally surrender and allow them to go in and dismantle it without a bomb.
It's going to be interesting to see what plays out here. We're talking with Dr. Susan Michaels. She's the president of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, also the director of American Christian Leaders for Israel. If the revolution happens from the people, there was an interview that Bibi Netanyahu had done with us here in the U.S. talking about how many Iranians like him and support the nation of Israel because they do want to be allies. They do want to be friends. And it is the Ayatollah and these radical leaders that have oppressed not only Israel, but their own people as well. There's starting to be videos of women taking off their hijabs and fighting and calling out against this government, which is, by the way, very risky thing to do because they haven't toppled yet. So they could have a lot of repercussion if that happens. But it seems like you said, the lightning could be striking. The spark could be happening to actually allow an internal revolution to say, this is our opportunity to get away from this oppression. And the wild thing, Susan, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that other nations around the Middle East region have not come to the aid of Iran to say, Israel, you're not allowed to do this. We need to go to war with you and stop you.
Yeah, there's been some weak statement of condemnation of Israel, but they have to do that.
Right.
But they've been bullied by Iran. You know, look, Iran has brought civil wars into the area. They're a big troublemaker for the whole Middle East. So they're all silently, or I should say behind doors, closed doors, rejoicing over what Israel is doing right now. But Iran is 100 million people. And the stats are that about 40 million of them are not following Islam, which means they have been so sickened by this radicalized version that's being forced on them that they've just backed away from the faith. They may be atheists, they may be nominal Muslims just to keep up an appearance. And then there's roughly 1 to 4 million Christians in Iran. So, it's not the majority, but it's a substantial percentage of the population that is ready to, I believe, to overthrow this if they could. Now, whether they will, I don't know, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's a possibility. We got just about a minute left here, Susan. I appreciate your time. What is next for Israel? Are they strong enough to continue this on? We are seeing some missiles get through their Iron Dome. Is there a concern that Israel's not able to maintain this for a long term?
Well, Israel can maintain what they've got. The problem is some of these missiles are more advanced now. They use the more elementary ones first off, and now there's some supersonic ones. They're faster. They're harder for the Israel defense to catch. And those are some of the direct impacts that we've been seeing. Our organization is there in Jerusalem. Our staff is there. They're going through it with the people of Israel. We're praying daily for their protection and for peace. And this amazing story of the hospital just shows that, God answers prayer. And so we're praying that they will have a supernatural protection over them during this time and that this will be brought to an end quickly. It doesn't have to drag out.
That's it. We don't need a long-term conflict.
Our prayer.
That's it. Well, amen to that, because you're right. We don't need a long-term conflict for this one. Susan, we appreciate it. Thank you guys for what you're doing. God bless you. Keep up this fight. Let's get you back on again real soon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Back after this here on The Voice of Reason for a Thursday. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. When reason meets radio. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Darn right it is. What's up? Welcome back into it. So great to have you today for a pre-Friday celebration. Moving through the Thursday today. So the situation escalating in Israel and Iran. The division within our own ranks here continue to divide as well. I don't know why it needs to be a dividing factor. We can agree on both ends. Doesn't have to be one radical side or the other. Wild concept. I know, right? Do your thing, Israel. We'll support you. We'll help you. But I don't know. The question is now, do we send the big bomb to go and just blow up their entire nuclear status at all? Or do we go in and do a precision or allow Israel to do the precision operation and try and remove those that way. That's a big question on what direction we go. We'll see what Trump does. I guess he's still making that decision to decide moving forward. But at the end of the day, for progressives, it's all about the identity politics. And this is why it's so frustrating to me as conservatives, as Republicans, why we are so good. We are the absolute professionals at beating ourselves up. I mean, we know how to tear apart each other. We know how to go at each other's jugulars. We don't do that with Democrats, but we sure do it with ourselves. I guess it's almost like the significant other, the abuser in a significant other situation, to where they know exactly where to pinpoint going after you. They know where your emotional spot is, where your Achilles heel is, and they know how to just make you so upset or so angry or so sad or browbeat you down so badly because they know exactly where to hit you to hurt you the most. And within the Republican Party, we kind of do the same thing. Democrats are loony, man. They just focus on the identity politics, even with the whole Israeli and Iranian thing. This was from The View today.
Criticism of the Israeli government is not anti-Semitic, okay? I am criticizing Benjamin.
Now, okay, first I want to stop and this may be very controversial because we're actually agreeing with Sonny from The View for a moment. Yeah, I know. Don't tell anybody, but that statement alone, now everything else you said is stupid, but that little tiny statement alone is true. Just because you criticize a government does not mean you're anti-Semitic. When we criticize our federal government, that does not mean we're anti-American. That means that our government's very stupid. If that's the case she's making here, okay, you can criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, you can criticize the Israeli government and not be anti-Semitic. But is that all of it?
Criticism of the Israeli government is not anti-Semitic, okay? I am criticizing Benjamin Netanyahu. I am criticizing Israel. I am not an anti-Semite. But under international criminal law, what is happening now is not legal.
Okay, that's not true.
That's not
okay.
But let's just remember, too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say.
Okay, so Whoopi Goldberg stepping in. Of course, it's all about the victimization here in America, right? Oh, that you think that the Iranian radical Muslim organizations, which, apparently is cool now because we're going to support them over our own allies like democracy in Israel and the Jewish communities there that have been beat by every group on the face of the earth for thousands of years. We're going to not support that. We're going to go for Iran, which, again, if they lived under the Sharia law, they would not be allowed to do the show they're doing. They would not be allowed to wear the stuff they're wearing right now. That, yes, if you're gay, you would be tied up and browbeaten, thrown off a 5-story building, tied to a chair, that all of these horrible things would happen. You would be stoned to death. These women in Iran that are taking off their hijabs and calling for the removal of the government right now, that is a bold thing to do when the government's still in operation right now. Now, the majority of the leaders have died, but that's still a bold move to make. And for some reason, the progressives that are all about you're oppressing me because I am part of the LGBTQ community, so therefore I'm just automatically a victim in society because you didn't say that I'm super duper awesome and that I have all these super cool privileges and need to be mentioned out, singled out individually. Because of that, I'm now oppressed. I totally understand that I'm in the same level of oppression as gays and women in the radical Muslim Brotherhood run governments. Yeah, that doesn't quite work out too well. It doesn't work with the narrative. Most people scratch their heads and say, are you really that dumb? We'll shift gears when we come back with Kurt Couchman around the corner. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yes, it is. What's up? Welcome back into it. So great to have you along for the ride on a pre-Friday celebration. Programming note for you. Tomorrow, we will have a Best Up program running as I will be on the road traveling It's been a crazy one, man. So today, here in our home base, Wichita, Kansas, where our flagship radio station is, the great radio host of Todd Starnes was actually in studio doing his show live from the studios I'm sitting in right now, as he is here for his book tour, launching his new book tour with Star Spangled Blessings. And tonight, we will have that event. Looking forward to that here on the local home front. By tomorrow, I will be on the road up to Kansas City as we have our state Republican summer convention, and being the vice chair of the state party, then I kind of have to be there, and we'll be emceeing and having some fun. My local program for my friends here in the Wichita, Kansas area, my local show Saturday morning, we will be broadcasting live at the Republican State Convention up there and have some really great guests on there. Give you the rundown if you can't make it to the convention and all the great people that'll be up there. So don't worry, we'll have you covered from 9 to 11 Saturday morning here in Wichita. Our nationally syndicated program on Saturday afternoons, that will be filled in by our great friend Mark Walters over at Armed American Radio. He'll be sitting in the seat for me on Saturday. So it is going to be a busy weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. Going to be a blast as usual. And there is so much going on right now to get you set for off-season elections this year. And, of course, for the midterm elections next year for the 2026 elections. And I got to tell you, that leads into our What's Trending story right now.
What's trending today?
Republicans have a huge opportunity, and I'm talking bigly, my friends.
And I think we're going to make it bigly.
If we actually do what we say we're going to do, if we pass the legislation that we say we're going to pass, if we get done the Trump agenda that was the mandate that was voted on when the elections happened in November of last year, we want the agenda done, and that is the reset button in Washington, D.C. That is the closing of the border, which we have seen. That's been a success. That's done already, baby. We're done. That's sealed. We're good now. Now we work on the immigration reform aspect of that to make sure it doesn't happen. Again, we cut government spending. We get our budget under control, and that's the next step. And that's where we go with our next friend here. As you know, great partners with us on the show with Americans for Prosperity, which on this you can find more information at protectprosperity.com, protectprosperity.com. Where are we at with the one big beautiful bill, the rescission bill, codifying some of those DOGE cuts, and so much more? Happy to have back on the program is the Senior Fellow of Fiscal Policy for AFP. Happy to have on Mr. Kurt Couchman. Kurt, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Andy, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, always great to chat with you on the show, and obviously right now we are in the midst of it. The deadline is still July 4th for the one big beautiful bill to go through the Senate, more than likely to bounce back to the House and then get to the president's desk. Are we still on time for that to happen? It sounds like we could have full-on Senate floor debates next week on this bill, right?
Yeah, amazingly, they just keep marching on with this. All the Senate committees have put out their pieces of the bill. A couple of blank spots to be filled in from the Senate Finance Committee. There are a couple of live issues they're still sorting out, but it does sound like it's possible they could sort them out and actually move this onto the Senate floor on Wednesday. So that'd be great. There's a lot of really good stuff in the bill.
That's exciting. Let's talk about how it may differ from what you've heard from when it originally came over from the House. Is it getting better or is it getting more watered down? Because normally in these processes, as it goes through more politicians, it gets more watered down to by the end product, it really doesn't do a whole lot. Is that happening with this bill, do you think?
Well, there are some things that actually got much better in the Senate, at least from what we've seen so far. For example, it makes sense for businesses to be able to expense investments that they make so that the cost of capital comes down, so that people are more productive and our standard of living goes up. In the House version, all of that stuff was only for 4 years, and then it would sunset. So Congress would have to come back, and there wouldn't be certainty for the people that are making the investments. But in the Senate version, all of the expensing would be permanent. There are other business expensing like provisions, like for research and development, that will be made permanent, and that's really positive. On the downside, there were some really transformative healthcare provisions in the House version that seem to have fallen out in the Senate so far, but the hope is that we'll be able to find savings somewhere else to bring them back. Big improvements to health savings accounts, reducing barriers to direct primary care, other really important pieces to move towards, patient-centered healthcare, a personal option where you're removing the layers of bureaucracy between us, the patients, and the medical providers.
Wow, that is exciting. I was not aware it was addressing healthcare like that. So more focused on not giving more power to the insurance companies and big pharma, which has been the push for a long time. Direct primary care, getting rid of the red tape on that. That's an exciting move.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was in the House package, and we're very excited for that. Like I said, it's not currently in the Senate package. We're hoping it'll be able to come back in there.
Yeah.
But then there's, funding for border security. The Department of Homeland Security has just been burning through money, and so they do actually need the additional appropriations that'll be in this reconciliation bill to continue securing our border and enforcing our immigration laws. And then there's also a really important shift from the Biden, Green New Deal agenda to real energy that provides, reliability, affordability for the American people. And it's not just the financial resources that need to shift, it's also people. There's only so many engineers, there's only so many people with heavy equipment that can install things. And so they need to be doing things that are as productive as they can be. And when they're subsidized to do solar farms and wind farms, which makes sense in some cases, but they don't need to be subsidized.
Yeah.
We need to have the reliable energy that we need. And that also obviously helps with manufacturing and everything in life.
Yeah, it's a great point. Here's kind of a dumb question for you. Why, if we are changing tax policy, let's say, for example, the Trump tax cuts 1.0 that we're trying to codify in this bill, why do we have a sunset on these? If we're thinking the policy is going to work, when we pass tax relief or tax changes, either an increase or a decrease in any fashion, why wouldn't it just be permanent at that time instead of like a sunset of 4 to 6 or 10 years or whatever? Why can't we just say this is going to work, we're going to pass taxes, and this is going to be the new rate from here on out until someone else changes it afterwards?
Are you talking about why they did that in 2017?
Well, why they did it in 2017, but then like you mentioned with the with some of these write-offs on investments now on getting rid of the 4-year sunset from the House version to permanentizing it now in the Senate. Why wouldn't we just change it to make it permanent in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ideal tax policy for everything to be permanent, broad-based, low rate, all that jazz. The issue is they're using the special process called budget reconciliation, and in that you're prohibited from increasing the deficits beyond the 10-year budget window. And even within the budget window, you're limited by the overall, basically how the committee instructions for how much they can spend or have to save add up to. So that's really kind of the guardrails on that process.
So it's really just we have the outlook of a 10-year budget, so we don't know what's after that, so we can't anticipate if it's going to run a deficit after that or not, kind of thing.
So there's this procedural thing called the Byrd Rule. It was set up by Senator Robert Byrd in the 1980s, and there are some rules about that. And one of them is that you can't do things that would increase deficits beyond the 10-year window. And so if you were to make things permanent without having commensurate savings, then that might increase deficits beyond the 10-year window, and then that would make that vulnerable to a point of order that a senator could bring up, and then if they got struck down, it could be fatal to the entire bill. So it's kind of like technocratic, legalese stuff, but that's why.
Ridiculous. All the technical garbage that happens in D.C. So let's talk about
the budget process is too complicated.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah, that's it. The budget process is ridiculous. And that's why let's go to the spending side of things right now. The fiscal hawks from the House, it was Thomas Massey. On the Senate side, it's Rand Paul and it's Ron Johnson. And understandably that we're only cutting, $1.6 trillion is a lot of money, but in a 10-year span, when it's $90 trillion being spent in a 10-year window, 1.6 really isn't that big of a deal. Are we getting better? The changes that the Senate's working on, do you see more cuts actually coming in government spending cuts on the Senate version of this, or is that about as much as we're going to see in a decrease in actually government spending?
Yeah, well, we haven't seen a score from the Congressional Budget Office that adds up all of the savings from the Senate committee pieces, but it seems like it's pretty similar to the House in terms of the overall, about $1.7 trillion in savings, and that's great. But we do need to do more at some point. It doesn't have to be in the reconciliation bill. If we can get it in there and get the votes for it, that's great. But another thing that can happen alongside reconciliation is this rescissions process. So this basically just means clawing back appropriations that Congress has approved, and then the president says, hey, we don't need to spend this. Can we cancel it? And then we're going to find out if Congress is willing to. The House has already approved it, $9.4 billion of clawbacks that the President Trump requested, and it's in the Senate now. Senate Appropriations Committee is having a hearing on that on Wednesday with Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought. We'll see how that goes, but they really do need to cut spending. There's a lot of wasteful nonsense. This is the first tranche of this first rescissions request, but there's a whole lot more behind that, maybe in the order of $200 billion that they could do.
Wow.
And, this is something that can affect the baseline, like the way that the budget is projected out through the decade. And so this could have massive impacts over the 10-year window.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. If we have just this one, which is $9 billion, if we have another one after, like you said, with rescission of $200 billion, that's substantial, and we're starting to move in that right direction. And you're right. I mean, it could offset the budget moving forward in a very long term. That's good news, right? We could actually see a balanced budget relatively soon.
Well, I mean, reconciliation is important. Obviously, rescissions are important too. But to get the whole way to a balanced budget, we're going to have to go beyond that and fix the system. Right now, we have a budget process that doesn't work as well as it should, but we've been working with a lot of members of Congress on fixes to that. So we're hopeful that some of that can get done after reconciliation, and then we'll be able to keep marching on towards fiscal responsibility. And more important than that even is having a government that's focused on the things we need it to do and not doing things that it shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're talking with Kurt Couchman, Senior Fellow of Fiscal Policy for Americans for Prosperity. Kurt, hang on the line. We got to take a hard break. When we come back, I want to talk about that budget process because some may not be aware the reconciliation bill is a great bill. The rescission bill is a great bill. None of that is the actual federal budget that's being discussed right now and has to be done. We'll see by the end of September into October's new fiscal year. We'll see if we actually hit that deadline for the first time in, I don't know, a really long time. We'll do some of that when we come back around the corner for your pre-Friday celebration sticker.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. America's safe space for common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Have the Iranians reached out to you?
Yes.
And what did they say?
I said it's very late. You know? I said it's very late to be talking. They even suggested they come to the White House. It's a big difference. But they've suggested that they come to the White House. That's, courageous.
That's President Donald Trump. Apparently, Iran offering to come to the White House. I don't know if we would let a nation that is called to the death of America, to the death of Israel, to kill the Jews, to where you need to kill all Americans. I don't know if we would allow them or want them to come into the United States or into the White House. That would be a little strange, but Donald Trump open to negotiation, and if that creates peace, because he is the guy that wants peace, and he has been the peace president since both administrations, then you know what? I guess it's up to him to decide what's going to happen. Right now, we're talking about some of the budget, the reconciliation, the rescission bill moving through the Senate and Congress right now as we're hanging out with Kurt Couchman, Senior Fellow of Fiscal Policy for Americans for Prosperity. Remember, reconciliation, rescission, not the federal budgets. We still have a federal budget to pass, and hopefully it's taken us a long time to actually do it. We passed it this year for the final 6 months of the fiscal year, so we're only 6 months behind, but the 12 appropriation bills, the full-on federal budget as a whole, usually supposed to be done by the end of September for the fiscal year that takes effect in October. Will we hit that deadline for the first time since, I want to say, the Obama administration? Kirk, can we actually hit that deadline, do you think? Are you optimistic?
No.
Of course not. No.
I mean, I wish. But first of all, let's back up for a second. On reconciliation, it's just really important for people to understand that there's a lot of individual provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 that unless there is a new reconciliation bill enacted, their taxes are going to go up.
Right.
Like for the average Kansas family's federal taxes, we're talking about more than $2,000 more if this reconciliation bill doesn't pass. So that's priority number one.
Yeah.
The rescissions bills, that will hopefully help the reconciliation bill pass.
Well, hopefully, yeah, with the fiscal hawks that are worried about spending, if we can pass these rescission bills knowing the federal government spending is going down, that might get them on board if they're concerned about this one, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I had a piece in the Daily Caller last month expecting we would be in this situation now, making exactly that case, saying, hey, let's do these rescissions bills to get the fiscal hawks on board with reconciliation. And we didn't talk about it in that piece, but, we could also fix the system, and that would help with things as well.
Sure.
But you were talking about the appropriations bills. They are starting to move, but those do take 60 votes in the Senate, so they have to be bipartisan. And Democrats are pretty unhappy right now, so it's not clear that we can actually make that happen in a timely way.
Is there an opportunity, do you think, and I know you guys were on board supporting this prior to as well, Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma proposing the Government Shutdown Prevention Act, or whatever he called it, to say that we can't allow that to loom over us, to say if we don't pass this budget at a certain time, the government's going to shut down and that everybody's going to die because of it.
We're all going to die because of you!
Yeah, like that's what we hear all the time if we don't pass these budgets right now, and then we pass these really crappy budget bills. Is that still in there? Can we kind of revive that and try that again?
Yeah, I mean, that actually has a lot of support for just taking shutdowns off the table entirely. We didn't even have shutdowns until President Jimmy Carter's administration created them. So the first one happened during Ronald Reagan's administration, then we've had a bunch afterwards. But states are increasingly showing the way. And actually Kansas, just a couple months ago, passed legislation over Governor Kelly's veto to prevent government shutdowns in Kansas.
Yeah.
And this is a wonderful thing. First of all, it strengthens the legislature because it's really the legislature that's supposed to be making policy. And within the legislature, it drives towards more of a bottom-up process because you have to actually earn votes by including members and getting their ideas in front of each other. You can't just ram it through with bloated accounts so special interests don't squeal.
Right.
You actually have to earn it, and that means that the budgets will be better going forward. So that is something that is still floating around in Congress, but it hasn't been enacted yet. We're hopeful that it will be at some point, though.
That would be nice, yeah, and put some sunsets in there. If you don't pass the budget by a certain amount of time, then there's automatic 1 or 2 or 5% deductions in spending across the board for every agency, every department, every salary, whatever it is, to make sure that we squeeze and say, hey, you literally have one job. You have multiple jobs, but your main job, pass the damn budget. Why can't we get this done? And it's insane that this drags out. Again, we're going to have an extension, a CR, an omnibus, whatever, to get through 6 months at a time, and it's going to be insane. Kurt, we're out of time, brother. I always appreciate it. Great stuff going on. Hopefully we can see some progress next week. Let's get you back on for another update soon.
Perfect. Would love to do it. Thanks, Andy.
Hey, you bet. Always a pleasure with our partners over at Americans for Prosperity. Again, go to protectprosperity.com, protectprosperity.com. See all the information. Let's codify those Trump tax cuts 1.0 and get into Trump tax cuts 2.0 moving forward. We're back at it again here soon. Until then, we'll see you on the radio. It's The Voice of Reason. Bye.